Hello everybody, welcome into the Hobby Bar. This is Jason, and welcome on in. Today, notice there's not really a model over here, and that's because, remember last time, gonna be doing a bit of checking out some assembly, and figure, go through opening it up and checking them out. So we got the Khainite Shadowstalker stuff for Warcry. Go ahead and open it on up and check it out with y'all. Kind of excited to get into these. I'm not sure how I'll paint them to fit the army though, and that'll be a fun project. Mostly because I painted my Daughters of Cain to have darker skin tone, and these have a very pale skin tone and to them, sort of like grayish pale. So I don't know how I'm gonna swing my army into this color scheme, or fit these guys into the color scheme. Kind of working on that. I noticed packaging was a bit off on this one. Like one of the tabs was pushed in, and I didn't have the punch sheet for the wound trackers and statuses and all those markers in here. So kind of a small bummer, but I did have all the bases and all of the spruce seemed to be there, so I'm happy. I have a lot of leftover wound markers and stuff for Warcry anyway, since I have other starter sets for it. So didn't really need it for the Khainite Shadowstalkers, but would have been nice to have them. Anyway, going through inventorying, making sure everything looks like it's there. And looks like they are. If you've never seen a GW sprue before, this is what they look like. The models that I've been painting from Games Workshop stuff, the Warhammer stuff, this is how they start out. Just all together on these sprues. So figured I'd show you how they come in, just in case some of y'all might not have seen it. It's a hard plastic. These are the bases. This is just how they start out. They're little discs. For Warcry, the standard small base is 28.5 millimeters, I believe. It's some weird number. It's new. And then I have a bigger one for the leader of the warband. So go into this bag and inventory the cards, make sure that everything's there. And I think the punch board was supposed to be in the bag, but oh well, again, no big deal. Go through the instructions here for assembly, just in case some of you might not have seen some of these before. I imagine most of you will have, but I want to go through, make sure I can kind of get how they go together, and make sure I can make all 9 of them out of it. Have enough bases, make sure everything's there. Get an idea of how pieces go together before actually going through and doing it. So we'll just go ahead and flip through the book for a bit, and then continuing to inventory stuff. Again, this is going to be a bit of a different day today, because it's mostly going to be checking out the instructions for this, just to get a kind of know where I'm heading with some of them. And then we'll get to assembling the leader of the group, which I will cut out a lot of that. So we'll be just skipping through each little clipping and stuff like that, and making it not take a couple hours to assemble. Here I'm trying to count up each of the model instructions, because there's the one leader, another one by itself, the 2 together, and then those 4 to make 8. You're supposed to be able to make 9 out of the kit. So I didn't realize that the 9th one is a couple pages later right away. So that'll be fun. Like, you can catch a glimpse of it there for the 9th one, but it didn't click in my head that that was number 9 right away. I was still looking through at inventorying the 4 plus the previous 4, so I was stuck on 8. So, little derpy on me. And they do give a color guide on the very back sheet, but took a bit for it to click for how to make all 9 minis out of this kit. So that though, I'll be like, whatever, we'll check it out later and inventory it. And we'll get to the Warcry cards. just because I haven't looked at their stats for the Shadowstalkers. So kind of wanted to go through them, compare some of the model options, and get an idea of how I want to build them. Get them into order. And I noticed it looked like I was missing one, so there it was. It was within the Warband rule cards. So just taking a quick comparison of the numbers here. And just wanting to go through and figure out which weapon options I wanted for each one. And thankfully it looks like some of them have the same symbols, they just have different weapons. So that's always a nice thing. Oh man. So for the stats, I think I'll do the rings, the ring and blade on these guys instead of the dual crossbows. I might make one of each, just to vary it. Then this last one is the leader at 190 points. That's what the 190 is. It has a 4-inch range, strength, or 3 attacks, strength 4, 2 damage or 4 damage. 20 health on a leader kind of sucks, but it'll be interesting. I wanted to get these guys and use them for my Age of Sigmar army anyway, even though that war scroll isn't updated in the AOS app, which it's a whole different thing. And then for the card packs for these, what they did for Warcry was they give you all the language options. So I'm probably going to just end up recycling all of these other options, and I believe I did already. But yeah, I just need to keep the English one and the cards and be good to go. Looking through their dice pool abilities though, they seem pretty interesting, relatively mobile, and pretty fun to use. Didn't really give a better shot of them, though, for y'all to read, but it's all pretty interesting. So, here in a bit we'll be flipping through the card and seeing who can do what exactly. So the leader gets the quad, oh, and only the leader. The warlocks get the triple. Those elites get both of them, and the basic line troops just get the double. But yeah, they seem kind of interesting. They have a ranged option on a double that any of their line troops can use to throw some damage out there as well, which is nice. And yeah, they seem like an interesting warband overall, if not very glass cannon. Very much like the Daughters of Cain warband that I tend to play. And right now I just want to reorganize some of the cards. And yeah. On the back of the abilities side, they show you what the roster could bring, potentially. So in this case, with the Shadowstalkers, it's kind of your options in the kit. Yep. And then we'll skip forward to getting ready to assemble. So, gotta make some space here on the desk. And, yeah, this part will be fun. I'm gonna be building the Shroud Queen first. So I figured I'd look at the card for that one and leave the fighter type up there. And that's why we got the Shroud Queen's instructions over there to the right. Skip to adding this box here on the table. So I used the lid of a different GW kit that I got a while ago. Because when I cut them out, I tend to lose pieces and knock them around because I'm kind of klutzy like that. So to help prevent myself from losing things, and also to kind of keep the mess to a minimum, I use a box lid instead of just a flat surface. It can be annoying at times, but I find it being annoying here is less annoying than clean up later trying to find little plastic parts all over the place. So I'm willing to work with the box lid limitations here. First, we need to determine which half of the sprue the bits are in that we'll be working with. So I'm going back and forth between looking at referencing the numbers on the instructions over there and looking around here on the sprue. And we're figuring out that we only need this one. We only need the B piece. And for this part, I'm just sort of looking around at which are the finer connection points between sprue and the model, or the mini piece. So the way I tend to clip things is I clip with the flat end away from the model first, and I work from the thinnest parts to the thickest parts for the connectors, because the thinner ones won't bend the mini as much. So it's just something I've done for a while. And then once the piece is separated, it tends to become easier to clip off the small connector bits that are still sticking up. Granted, it's all personal preference on this. A lot of people will just flat clip so that they just separate it flatly. I like to do it this way because then I can come back with the mold line remover metal stick that's over there and clean, or get a clean snip and then use it almost right away. Kind of be showing my process for how I do that on one piece, and then we'll sort of fast through the rest of them, similar to how we're doing it here with these pieces, where I basically just showed how I did it on one, and then we fast forward to them all being separated and just putting them in the box for y'all. So we're going to start with the head, and for the head here, I do tend to work the piece back and forth usually a little bit. For these nippers, I think I need to take a file to them and sharpen them up again, because the tip doesn't quite close all the way and they aren't quite flat, but I've been using these for a few years, so they've been doing me well so far. Just, I think they're a little dull at this point, so they might need some love. Also, the spring inside kind of broke, which has me a little sad, but is what it is. I always have another pair that I can use that are just kind of sitting around. But here I'm using the mold line remover to clean up those spots that I just snipped the connectors off of. From also, you should go around and make sure there's no mold lines while doing it, just in case. I like to use the mold line remover because then I don't have to worry about actually using an X-Acto blade, though those work perfectly fine too. I actually started using I think it was a nail clipper. The little file from in there. Basically all you need is a bit of metal with relatively sharp corners-ish. And you can kind of do this. Because the idea is you run the corner across the plastic, and the metal is going to hold up better than the plastic, so it'll gently shave parts of the plastic off and sort of try to flatten it out. But it's not sharp enough to actually cut your skin all that much. Like you can probably do it, as with anything, if you try hard enough, you can probably do it. But it's a lot harder to cut yourself with the mold line remover than an X-Acto or otherwise. So that's why I like using it. Granted, it's harder to get into some areas, like if you have a mold line in, say, an armpit of a mini, or just in somewhere hard to reach, it's going to be harder to use. However, I like it. I think it's what, $12-15 now, somewhere in there, which, of course, Citadel price for sell you a metal stick for like $20, right? But it's one of the things I would say is a nice one, a nice addition. Their flat cutters are okay. I wanted to try them out, basically. That's what it boiled down to. Because I was using some just, frankly, cheap, crappy ones. They weren't exactly the best ones for the nippers. So I decided to try Citadels, see how they felt. They felt good until the spring broke, but even with the broken spring, I like how they feel and operate. Anyway, we're going around flat nipping off the bits of sprue that are remaining on this face shield and scraping off the remains. So anyway, we're going on to dry fitting now. And with dry fitting, I tend to take a lot of time on assembly because it's generally my favorite part of the process. Like, sure, I love painting and stuff, which you can tell by all the colors that are around, but assembly is honestly my favorite part of the process. But I'm also really slow at it because I tend to try to be as careful as I can in assembly. So that's why you'll see me dry fit multiple times just to see, hey, how does this piece fit in here and all that. Gonna use some plastic glue here. Again, Citadel product. I kind of started the hobby in Warhammer, so tend to use a lot of Citadel products. Get the glue around here and in the little gap where the hair crosses, and fit it on up. So, nice thing with plastic glue, if you've never used it, it chemically fuses the pieces together this way. It's not like super glue where it may just break off later on a whim. It's going to be a little bit harder to break off since it tries to fuse everything together. But yeah, what I'm doing now is I'm going around with a paper towel and dabbing around the edges where some might have seeped out from behind the plastic, just to make sure that there isn't any on the outside that might start trying to have the plastic react with air, which tends to leave it sort of crusty and weird looking. But now the face is glued up, and we're going to move on to the body. So just sort of showing, nipping off each of these little nubs from the sprue runners. And we'll go ahead and just sort of show each little clip here of nipping off each little bit just to get them nice. I don't believe I show much of the mold line removing anymore from here on out. Just sort of each little nip as long as I catch it in frame. But now that you kind of have an idea of the process, go ahead and fast forward through the rest of this and head on towards the end. So I'll catch up with y'all here once we're towards the end of it, when we're doing some fitting up of the cloak that wraps around this Shroud Queen, and so we can figure out how we want to operate that. And yeah, so catch up with y'all here in a little while when we get to that part. Alright, now here we are jumping into clipping out some extra pieces onto the that would fit up on the mini. Just because I like painting fully assembled if I can. I figure for this group, Maybe I can try doing some sub-assembly since their cloaks are rather obnoxious and very likely to get in the way. Only downside to building in sub-assembly is you have to remember how each piece is going to fit together, and on this one, the Shroud Queen, that shawl is actually what keeps her up off the base a little bit. And we'll get to that dry fit up and looking at it later. But for this I just wanted to see how much of it would be covered up if I were to glue it in place. And as I'm flipping it back and forth, I'm realizing I don't really like how much is covered up, so this is where I kind of decide, you know what, we'll just leave this part off, and we won't deal with that. For this part though, I'm trying to figure out how this little additional dagger fits onto her. Now the instructions show it just sort of sits there on her lower back, like right around where her belt would be. And it's just supposed to be glued there. And I'm like, there's like nowhere for this to go, and it doesn't really seem like it sits well anywhere. So I'm basically tempted to let that just stay there and ignore the dagger. Here we are moving on to clipping out the last bit of the shroud that comes up around behind her and connects to what would be the front. So I do want to try dry fitting this up to see how it'll fit up and how much this would cover. Because again, I'm one of the people that like to paint as much assembled as possible. So I want to take a look at it, see how it feels. And the nice part about painting fully assembled, you don't have to worry about seam lines potentially being there, which I am worried about for where the shawl connects up at the top. But that's where I think I'll paint most of the body first. Get most of the shawl painted and then come back to attack that spot. So that's why we'll go ahead and decide, we're gonna decide here and now, this is getting glued. This way it's as assembled as possible with just one separate piece that I'll have to connect on her front and then connect to the shawl to finish up the model. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get this connected up with glue and make sure that it still dry fits well with the front. And then we'll get to the spin to wrap out the day. Catch up with y'all here in a bit. So instead of the spin, I just wanted to show you from the overhead, sort of how it looks. Again, kind of frustrated, I don't know where that dagger is going to go. So we're going to leave her in 3 pieces, technically 4 because she's not on the base, and call her good for the day. That's about 2 hours of assembly though, because I tend to assemble slowly, so see ya for this day. And here's the spin of the mini at the end, just so you can kind of see how she looks. Again, not glued down to the base, but very tricky. Good old Warhammer elves. So, hope you like that change of pace, everybody. Enjoy this slight difference with a little bit of build day and unboxing just to look at some stuff for Warcry. And yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. And this model will be the one that we're going to be working on next for the next few weeks to months. So, get settled on in and I'll see y'all around. Have a good one. Take care.